Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, I am Feng Shenghu, the Richard G. Engelsman Dean of Arts and Sciences. And it is my honor to welcome you to the installation of Dwight A. McBride as the inaugural Gerald Early Distinguished Professor. It is wonderful to see so many colleagues and members of our community here today. I would also like to welcome everyone joining us on our live stream. Thank you all for helping mark this special occasion. We are delighted to have several of Dwight's family members in the room. They include Makia Hampton, his sister, Willie Hampton, his brother-in-law, Tori and Austin Gear, his cousins. I'm also so pleased to have a few Gerald Early's family members in the room as well. And they are Ida Early and their daughters, Rosalind and Lynette. So would all of you please stand to be recognized? It's hard to believe that we are almost halfway through the academic year. And what a tremendous year it has been, despite some challenges. Our faculty and students have received some of the most prestigious recognitions in the world, and our scholars have produced innovative and thought-provoking work across numerous fields. This culture of academic excellence and interdisciplinary collaboration is at the heart of our 10-year strategic plan, the Decade of Arts and Sciences. Hundreds of faculty members have contributed their time and their talents to putting this ambitious vision into action. And I've been so pleased to see the ripple effects these early achievements have had across our university community. One of the most exciting accomplishments has been the incredible expansion of the arts and sciences faculty. We have recruited successfully more than 50 world-class scholars who embody our core values of academic distinction, education access and excellence, community impact, and a diverse and inclusive environment. And last year, one of these outstanding new hires was Dwight McBride. Dwight joined WashU as a senior advisor to Chancellor Martin with a faculty appointment in our Department of African and African American Studies. A highly regarded thought leader, his insights and expertise have been called upon to support numerous groups inside and outside WashU. And he was recently named Executive Director of the University Center for the Study of Race, Ethnicity, and Equity. Dwight's ability to build meaningful connections with diverse communities in such a short time is truly a testament to his extensive experience as an academic leader, educator, and scholar. Before joining WashU, he served as president of the New School in New York City. He also held leadership positions at Emory, Northwestern, and the University of Illinois at Chicago, from department chair, department head, to dean, to provost, all sorts of positions. You name it, right? But this is just one dimension of Dwight's academic portfolio. As you'll hear in just a few minutes from Gerald Early, the Merle Kling Professor of Modern Letters, Dwight is a renowned scholar of race and literary studies. He is also an elected member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And he has published many books and essays on connections between race theory, Black studies, and identity politics. He co-founded and continues to edit the annual open access journal, James Bowen Review, now co-published by WashU. I'm just so pleased that Dwight decided to join the Arts and Sciences faculty last year. As Dean, I really truly feel incredibly fortunate. So he has been and will continue to be a tremendous asset to our community. And now I would like to turn our attention to the namesake of this professorship, Gerald Early, and the donor who made it possible. For that, I would like to invite Chancellor Martin to the podium.
Thank you very much, Feng Sheng. Good afternoon, everyone. I am so pleased to be able to stand here in front of you to celebrate two of our colleagues today. Today we gather to celebrate not just an endowed professorship, but we celebrate a profound testament to friendship, scholarship, and the enduring impact of extraordinary individuals. The Gerald Early Distinguished Professorship represents more than an academic honor. It commemorates the legacies of two remarkable men who have been integral to Washington University, Chancellor Emeritus William H. Danforth and Professor Gerald Early. Gerald Early, the Merle Kling Professor of Modern Letters in the Department of African and African American Studies, is quite simply one of the most significant scholars of our time. Gerald has dedicated his career to exploring and illuminating the nuanced intersections of American culture, race, and sports. Throughout his tenure at Washington University since 1982, he has not only been a prolific scholar and essayist, but also a key institutional leader, serving in roles such as the chair of African and African American Studies and director of the Center for the Humanities. His scholarly work, which has garnered significant recognition, including a National Book Critics Circle Award, reflects a profound commitment to understanding American life through critical and compassionate lenses, whether exploring prize-fighting, fatherhood, literature, or the experiences of Black America in the 1960s. A testament to scholarly excellence, Gerald has been honored with election to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the American Philosophical Society. As the executive editor of The Common Reader, WashU's interdisciplinary journal, he continues to shape academic discourse and provides platforms for important scholarly conversations. What makes Gerald truly exceptional is not just his scholarly breadth, but his profound commitment to understanding the human experience. His work consistently reveals how words construct our reality, showing that the human experience still comes down to words. Through his writing, teaching, and leadership, he has helped all of us see our world with greater nuance, empathy, and depth. His friendship with Bill Danforth was itself a remarkable testament to mutual respect and shared values. Their bond went far beyond institutional roles. When Gerald faced a painful moment of racial profiling in Frontenac, it was Bill Danforth who personally visited him and offered quiet, steadfast support, not as a university leader, but as a true friend. Today, by establishing this professorship, Bill Danforth ensured that Gerald's legacy of intellectual curiosity, moral courage, and deep humanistic understanding will continue to inspire generations of scholars to come. Now, in Dwight McBride, we have found a scholar who embodies these same qualities of intellectual rigor and commitment to understanding our complex social world. His selection as the inaugural holder of the Gerald Early Distinguished Professorship is a beautiful continuation of a legacy of excellence. So to you, Gerald Early, to Bill Danforth, and to Dwight McBride, thank you for showing us the transformative power of scholarship, friendship, and unwavering principle. I'd like to invite you, Gerald, up to the podium so I can present this to you and give you an opportunity to share a few words. Gerald, as a token of our great respect and the great respect that Bill Danforth had for you, it is my honor on behalf of the university to present this medallion in this shadow box to you. It reads, the Gerald Early Distinguished Professor in Arts and Sciences, in grateful appreciation, presented to Gerald Early, December 10th, 2024. Gerald, thank you for your thank you.
My goodness. I have a portrait hanging in the library, and I try not to go on the floor where it is. And one day, a young man, I was walking up to the library, a young man was coming out of the library. He looked at me, and he said, "You're alive!" I said, yes, I'm alive. I saw your portrait. I thought they were only dead people. I've been told that getting something like this is also usually something that happens if you're not alive. So so Washington University has honored me twice with things that usually go to dead people, I suppose. But I would like to say a word about Dwight McBride. Shanti Parikh, some time ago, asked me if I could help her bring Dwight to Washington University. She said she had been in conversation with him and he seemed like he might be interested in coming. And I said to myself, oh wow, that would be fantastic, but I don't think that's probably going to happen. And so we talked about it, and I gave her some advice, probably not very good advice, about how to go about this. And I think she might have followed some of it, and some of it she probably didn't follow, probably very wise of her not to have. But I do remember mentioning in passing when the talk was going on about getting him here, I said, well, you know, I think the university has this chair that's named for me, and maybe that could be used to bring him here. And so I was just so pleased, so happy, because I said that sort of as almost an afterthought, because in some ways I didn't know if the chair was for real. You know, I've been told that and everything. I said, oh, I guess it's for real, but I wasn't really sure. And so when it turned out that they were able to give him the chair and enabled him to come here, I was just so pleased. One, that the chair was real, but the other was that someone of his stature was coming here. I mean, I just tremendously admired Dwight. I had him come here some years ago, I don't know if he remembers, to be a facilitator at a retreat and for African-American studies. I was the chair at the time. And I don't like retreats, but that was the funnest retreat. I just thought he just did a fantastic job. It was just the funnest retreat I'd ever been on. It was just wonderful how he was able to just make everyone relax, make us talk, make us really feel like a community. And it was then that I really thought, oh, wow, I had read about him. I knew about his interest in James Baldwin Review, other kinds of things like this. But it was this that really made me think, oh, it would be wonderful to have someone like that here. It would be just a great accomplishment for the university to have someone like that here. And so it came to pass that it happened. I have a certain amount of pride that I played a kind of insignificant role in having this chair named for me to help to do this. But someone like Dwight is such a rarity to have someone like that with these kind of accomplishments as a scholar and as an administrator to come here, and what he can do for our Department of African Studies, what he can do as a leader for the Center for the Study of Race, Ethnicity, and Equity. What he can do in those areas is just really it's just really exciting to think of. And so I can't tell you how pleased I am with this, that it turned out so well, and that he's here, and that, and I'm alive for it.
Well, Dwight, now is the moment. If I could invite you, please, to come up to receive your medallion. Dwight, on behalf of our entire community, we could not be happier that you chose us to spend this next chapter of your very distinguished academic career. I'm deeply grateful for our friendship and for the support that you've given me and so many members of our community. And so on behalf of our colleagues who are gathered here this afternoon, those who are watching on the live stream, it's my honor to present this medallion to you. On the obverse, it reads, "The Gerald Early Distinguished Professor in Arts and Sciences." And on the reverse, "Dwight A. McBride, December 10th, 2024. Dwight, congratulations. You have to wear it? All right, we'll get a quick and then it's all you.
Thank you, and thank you. And Gerald, I love retreats, so it was kind of a marriage made in heaven. Good afternoon, and thank you, Chancellor Martin, Dean Hu, Provost Wendland for being here. Thank you to my good friends and family who've traveled, many from great distances, and friends and colleagues who are tuning in on the live stream today. And with gratitude to my WashU colleagues and students who have made the effort to be here, especially at what I know is one of the busiest times of the academic year. I'm both humbled and deeply grateful for this honor. It's even more meaningful to be installed in a professorship bearing the name of my beloved colleague, Dr. Gerald Early. Gerald stands as a peer among the most distinguished scholars, writers, educators, and leaders in American letters. His intellectual contributions have profoundly shaped the understanding of African American culture, history, literature, and his leadership in both the academic and public spheres continues to elevate the discourse on race and culture. As a professor at WashU, who's also held numerous academic leadership roles, he's inspired generations of students and colleagues alike, and I commit to doing my level best to live up to the example set by the namesake of this incredible honor. The title of these remarks today are Black Letters and Black Leadership, or What I've Shaped into a Kind of Life. Part 1, Shaping a Life. I begin with a poem by Lucille Clifton. Won't you celebrate with me what I've shaped into a kind of life? I had no model, born in Babylon, both non-white and woman. What did I see to be except myself? I made it up here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. I was not destined to become an academic. Growing up as I did, son of a sharecropper's daughter and a manual laborer's son in the small town of Belton, South Carolina, I had neither met any such people nor understood academia as a career to which one might even aspire. But I was fortunate that my parents knew well the significance of a college education. Though they themselves never had the opportunity to attend college, they worked tirelessly to make sure that my younger sister and I both did. To this day, I remain inspired by their example of uncommon sacrifice. Their example is in part the reason that I so deeply appreciate the importance of providing higher education opportunities to all members of our society. And given the shifting demographic trends in the United States, notwithstanding the fear that this strikes in the hearts of many of our fellow citizens, it is more important now than ever that we be mindful of access to college. I'm a true believer in the power of higher education, quite literally to change lives. I'm living proof of that. Indeed, the closest I come in my life to anything that resembles a kind of religious fervor is my belief in higher education, both as an engine for social mobility and as a critical institution for advancing an educated citizenry, which is indispensable to sustaining a functioning democracy. There was a time, not so long ago, when even the US government shared this goal of educating more of its citizens. We now seem to be moving into a dangerous new era where our government appears hell-bent on destabilizing, or worse still, dismantling the sector. That political shift is a significant one and deserves our ongoing vigilance. My vision and values have certainly been shaped undoubtedly by my experiences as a native son of South Carolina, as well as my academic and leadership roles at numerous institutions. And I remain proud of the formal and informal education I received in each of those contexts. I'm humbled by the many mentors along the way who affirmed what native ability and talent I may have had long before I had any title, and who nurtured it to become something more. I remain keenly aware and enormously grateful for the investments of many who have contributed to any success and recognition that I've enjoyed in my career. And while on one level, a facile reading of my resume portrays an academic life that has involved successive scholarly achievements and a well-worn route through progressive leadership roles, that would only be a part of the story. And to be clear, the politics of racial respectability, which is a dominant strategy of resistance against white supremacy, encourages such a reading of my professional life. And yet, this is among its shortcomings as a strategy against anti-blackness. Narratively, it often conceals just as much as it reveals. It conceals the fact that while I was indeed the first African American in nearly all of the leadership roles that I entered, I was also the first openly gay person in those roles. And that never was included as a part of the press release. It conceals the fact that while my academic pedigree is an enviable one, it was also enabled by affirmative action, which had little to do with my abilities or my aptitude, but rather was necessary because of the racial prejudices that had ossified in our institutions over decades of our nation's racist history, to exclude the likes of me. It conceals the myriad ways that at times, when I and others like me bit our tongues and kept our heads down to, as the saying says, go along to get along. It conceals the fact that nearly every encounter that I've had with white colleagues, who in almost every context have been the majority of my interlocutors, I'm always thinking first about how best to make them comfortable in my presence before ever considering my own needs. I think of all of the time, all the wasted time and energy that these concealments have consumed over the course of my life. And I wonder at what more I and others like me might have achieved unburdened by such mostly invisible but time-consuming and emotionally depleting labors. And for a fleeting moment, I can glimpse something of the unearned grace, of the comfort and ease of the experience of what it must feel like to be a similarly situated white man in a white supremacist world. Though can we ever call it an experience, since white supremacy's genius is that its white subjects never really have to confront the relative privilege of that positionality in our world because it is so naturalized. And all of a sudden, from that perspective, the lightness of being doesn't seem quite as unbearable. Part 2, celebrating Black excellence. Black genius, Black excellence, Black achievement, and even Black joy then all exist despite society's intentionally designed to dismantle them at best and to actively thwart them at worst. So for me, every instance is a cause for celebration. And so we return to Clifton's poem, "Won't You Celebrate With Me?" which is at once a poetic act of resistance and affirmation. Clifton positions celebration as a radical act, one that asserts the value of Black life against the dehumanizing forces of systemic oppression and violence of oppressive structures like the Babylon that she invokes. To celebrate, in Clifton's parlance, is not merely to survive, it is to claim agency and to refuse the negation of Black life that history and society have so often made possible. In biblical traditions, Babylon is the epitome of imperial oppression and spiritual corruption, a site of domination where identities are stripped away and autonomy is denied. Clifton's invocation of Babylon places her in a lineage of those who have endured and resisted systems of violence and dehumanization. For her, Babylon is not merely a metaphor. It is a living, breathing force embedded in the structures of racism, sexism, and systemic inequality. And yet, in the face of Babylon, Clifton does not lament or acquiesce. Indeed, she celebrates. The poem's opening line, "Won't you celebrate with me?" is not a request, but a summons, a call to bear witness to the miracle of her survival and self-creation. Clifton's declaration, "What did I see to be except myself? I made it up," underscores the centrality of self-creation. This process of making it up, oneself, is not born out of whimsy, but out of necessity, a necessity forged in the crucible of Babylon's oppression. In refusing Babylon's definition, Clifton claims authorship over her own identity. Her reference to this bridge between starshine and clay suggests a liminal space, a tension between the earthly and the transcendent, between the material realities of suffering and the spiritual aspirations of joy and freedom. This bridge is where Clifton lives and makes a way to thrive. She exists in defiance of Babylon, not as a product of its destruction, but as a creator of something entirely new. Her emphasis on shaping a life points to a fundamental distinction, the difference between a life that must be consciously constructed against oppression and a life that unfolds with unearned privilege of inheritance and security. Those whose lives are not dictated by systemic violence can imagine a life unimpeded as the natural unfolding of potential. Their lives, in this sense, are molded by a culture that affirms their value, offers structures of support, and provides a roadmap for existence. Clifton's life, by contrast, is a kind of life because it cannot rely on those structures. It must be shaped within a world that seeks to deny its very possibility. By acknowledging the absence of a model, Clifton calls attention to the systemic conditions that render Black lives precarious. Yet her act of shaping a life becomes an assertion of agency, challenging those very conditions. Part 3, reconciling theory and justice. I remember the first time I realized that even the very critical methods of my stock and trade in academic discourse were implicated in the ideology of white supremacy. It was 1991, the first year of my PhD program at UCLA, in a literary theory course, where I had written a seminar paper titled "Race as Allegory," based on the theoretical writings of Paul de Man. My professor had encouraged me to work on developing the paper into a journal article for publication. And indeed, in 1993, after 2 years and many revisions, it did become my first scholarly publication, appearing in Modern Fiction Studies under the title "Speaking the Unspeakable" on Toni Morrison, African American intellectuals, and the uses of essentialist rhetoric. Now, if the story ended here, being published in the fall of my third year of graduate school, again, it would appear to be a tale of academic success. However, once again, that doesn't tell the entirety of the story. You see, when I completed that seminar paper, the process of its writing shook my faith in the entire academic humanist project. As it happened, that fateful winter quarter of 1991 also coincided with the brutal beating of Rodney King in Los Angeles, which had been videotaped and broadcast worldwide. As a young black man, I had by then already had my own unpleasant and disrespectful run-ins with law enforcement, though none that rivaled anything that happened to King. For so many of us, the existence of the videotape of Rodney King's beating, horrifying as it was also vindication. It was proof that everyone could see for themselves of the violence, not to mention the more garden variety profiling and rank disrespect perpetrated on black bodies at the hands of law enforcement. At the time, many of us hoped that this just might turn the tide and excite the moral outrage of our fellow citizens, such that real and lasting change might be possible. A little over a year later, however, all 4 of the LAPD officers who beat Rodney King were acquitted, and an urban uprising broke out in Los Angeles. Now, against this brutal backdrop, the writing of a finely tuned analysis on the concept of race in a discourse that demanded passion and personal hurt and harm be written out in place of objective analysis and argument, and in a theoretical lingua franca that limited its audience to scholars and intellectuals, felt hollow and ineffectual at best. Was offering up black racial suffering to be dispassionately examined and analyzed by those who did not have to encounter the hurt, the violence, the injury that black people lived, the best that academic discourse could do? Is this what I aspired to do for the rest of my professional life? Write papers for audiences of hundreds at best, in hopes that others would cite them in production of yet more such papers? If that was my labor, what was I doing to liberate black people and to further the cause of social justice? I completed my second year of graduate school, filed for the master's degree, and promptly took a leave of absence for 1 year, during which time I worked full-time as the interim assistant director to the Academic Advancement Program, or AAP as it was called, at UCLA. At that time, AAP was the largest affirmative action program in the nation and was aimed at furthering the achievements of underrepresented students at UCLA. They offered tutoring across the undergraduate curriculum and was home to an academic counseling unit that served the needs of those same students. The AAP director, at the time one of the most visible people of color on campus, had offered me the job, as he had been one of the people I'd turned to for advice about my growing crisis of faith in the life of the mind. Looking back, it was a job for which I had no real experience, except that I was smart, I was a quick learner, extremely well organized, and deeply committed to the values and the goals of the program. I supervised the counseling unit of about a dozen academic advisors, oversaw the day-to-day administrative operations of AAP, and helped to organize the annual Summer Bridge program for entering first-year AAP students. This was my first foray into leadership and into doing work that felt more practically and directly linked to social justice. Supporting programs instrumental to the success of students of color was exhilarating. Every day I could see how my efforts, my interventions, were making a difference. And to be honest, to this working class kid, it was also, it didn't hurt that I was earning a salary that outpaced anything that I'd known to that point in my life. Although I didn't fully appreciate it then, this was likely when I first became seduced by the potential of work in academic leadership. It is not hyperbole to say that my academic career was rescued by legal scholar and theorist Patricia Williams, in particular in her 1991 book, The Alchemy of Race and Rights, The Diary of a Law Professor. Reading Williams was a watershed moment in my career. It was the first time I had witnessed a mind at work that was committed to high theory, but in a way that did not exercise Black experience or evacuate it of its pain and passion. Indeed, the book itself demonstrated that one not only could marry the two, but that for theory to be useful or relevant in addressing Black life in an anti-Black society and in its institutions, one must indeed find ways of merging the two. Williams did not write out the passion, the hurt, the rage, all, by the way, profoundly human responses to the social and literal violence done to Black people in an anti-Black world. She embraced it and used it and wrote in a way that was suited for academic audiences, yes, but that also spoke to broader reading publics. Shortly before my interim assistant directorship concluded, I was called to a meeting by the dean of undergraduate programs, who inquired about my plans, praised the work that I was doing in partnership with the director that we had formed, and asked if I might be interested in staying on in the role. Honestly, I had taken the job knowing it would be for 1 year, so I had not considered this as an option. During that time, I was also pursuing a singing career on the side. I'd done demo work for a rising famous songwriter, worked in background vocals in recording sessions, recorded a demo of my own, and was performing regularly. Since I hadn't made plans beyond the taking of the job for 1 year, the conversation with the dean really called the question for me. I thought about my life as a singer. While I certainly had talent, I had also met and worked with some amazing vocalists, far more talented than I, who would never make it in the way that we conceive of success in the music industry. Real vocal talent was not the recipe for success in the era of Madonna and the boy band, a time when video had indeed killed the radio star. Packaging a look and a brand reigned supreme in the MTV era, and so I ruled out music as too arbitrary and precarious a career for me as just another Black man with a good voice. So by comparison, a life in research, scholarship, and teaching was also something at which I had excelled. And I knew that if I applied myself in this realm, I had a much better chance of carving out a path to success. After all, at that time, the academic job market had not quite yet become the job lottery that it is today for newly minted PhD students. Plus, at that juncture, jobs in African American literature and culture were on the rise, as English departments were catching up to the scholarly and curricular changes needed to diversify the old, white male-dominated literary canon. And by the time I completed my PhD, the turn-of-the-century culture wars were in full swing. The first edition of the Norton Anthology of African American Literature, highly anticipated and much discussed canon-building project at the time, would be published in 1996, the year that I defended. I felt that I had an opportunity to control more of my own destiny as an academic. And even in 1993, I knew enough to know that if I wanted to return to a career in academic leadership, having the PhD was going to provide more options in that world too. The pragmatic considerations ultimately won out in the end, and so I circled back a few days later to thank the dean and to let him know that I would be returning to finish my PhD that fall. Now, this was not the last time that I would have a crisis of faith in the academy. After all, institutions that were not designed with you or others like you in mind are destined to fall short in their accommodation of you. As I have often said, especially to fellow Black scholars, other scholars of color, and women scholars who I've been privileged to mentor, you cannot hold out for any institution to love you. Institutions aren't organized for that. Love, at its best, is particular and bespoke. Institutions deal in generalizations and serve their constituents at a ready-to-wear scale. And the idea of the generalized subject upon which they often function all too often reinscribes the hegemony of whiteness. So if I may take today as an opportunity to fill in some of the narrative concealments of an academic journey that a too facile reading might render as a seamless progressive march, mine has been an institutional life shaped out of these contexts and committed like Clifton's Poetics, to making space. Making space for inclusive excellence. Making space for the often misunderstood scholars doing work at the intersections of disciplinary norms. Making space for building academic communities that can sustain those who do not always feel at home or welcomed in our institutions. Making space for broadening our ideas of what leadership should and can look like and be. Making space to create policies and processes attuned to help instead of hinder those who persist and even thrive at the margins of our institutions. I close with the words of my beloved late mentor and one of the world's greatest literary treasures, Toni Morrison. These have sustained me and been a touchstone for me in every leadership role that I've held. Indeed, they are words that continue to guide the way that I've endeavored to shape a life of the mind to which I've committed my career. You will be in positions that matter, positions in which you can decide the nature and quality of other people's lives. Your errors may be irrevocable. So when you enter these places of trust, of power, dream a little before you think, so that your thoughts, your solutions, your directions, your choices about who lives and who doesn't, about who flourishes and who doesn't, will be worth the very sacred life that you've chosen to live. You are not helpless, you are not heartless, and you have time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dwight, for that wonderful presentation and for sharing your deep thoughts with us. I so appreciate Dwight, not just because he's such a brilliant scholar, but also just his willingness to be vulnerable in front of all of us and his authenticity. I think that he's just a wonderful colleague to have around. So thank you again. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today to recognize Dwight and Gerald, truly two pillars of our community and two incredible scholars making a lasting mark on WashU and on arts and sciences. So this concludes the formal portion of today's ceremony. And now please join me in the back there for the reception to offer your own congratulations to Gerald and to Dwight. Thank you so much.